We are live.
Got it. Okay, well then I will officially call this meeting of the Investment Committee of the Cincinnati Board of Park Commissioners to order. And I'll note that it's February the 2nd at 3:04 p.m. and all the members are present. So we will move into the agenda. And Craig, how about you walking us through the agenda today?
That sounds great. First, we're going to go through, we're going to have approval of the October 27th, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I have somebody motion?
I will move to approve.
I will second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Well done.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the next topic, and that's the performance review, the fourth quarter performance review. Would you all like me to share my screen to walk through it, or does everybody have it in hand?
I have it in front of me. It's up to you.
Whatever's easy. I have it in front of me as well.
Okay, we'll walk through. I'll just walk through it. We'll start with the U.S. Bank. And the one I do want to point out is the PNC, since they have updated the investment policy, how they're performing. But U.S. Bank, very consistent throughout. The third quarter was at 5.49, with year-to-date at 14.87. And a lot of this is due to the solid gains in the equity. If you look at the bottom, the stock market turned in a solid performance for 2021. The S&P gained 26.9%, Dow Jones 18.7%, and NASDAQ 21.4%. So that was a large driver of our year-to-date performances. Miles Edwards, going down the ball and gainer. Miles Edwards, obviously they're going to perform at a higher rate because they have a higher percentage of their portfolio in equities. And I do want to point out this is where PNC does get interesting. If you look at their 3-month performance, this is with the updated investment policy. They ran at 6.17 with the Bettman account, where that's pretty significantly higher than what we saw out of U.S. Bank and Fifth Third that have the same investment policy. As you get into PNC's year to date, keep in mind the investment policy changed around May. So that's where you're going to have that deflated a little bit. So going into 2022, for obviously the quarterly and year-to-date numbers, they'll be utilizing the same investment policy as U.S. Bank and Fifth Third. Fifth Third underperformed within their investments. Their fourth quarter was at 4.8, with the year-to-date at 14.2. So you'll see there was an underperformance there, as well as looking at them, comparing them to their 3-year versus U.S. Bank. Those two funds, keep in mind, are the trustee. They are the trustees of the 3 of those funds. The ones they are not is the Levy Clock Fund. So we're kind of hands are tied there. One thing that we'll be looking at going into the next year is definitely in this part of our next discussion is I want to look at kind of how we look at fees for each of these and start maybe addressing the fees and looking at the investment managers based on the fee schedule. So any questions over the fourth quarter performance review?
You know, this is totally expected. You know, I know when I went over my personal portfolio with my advisors too, I said, you know, if we've got an S&P that hit 20-some%, how can it be that we're only averaging like here for the year 14, whatever, 15%? And the answer I got was that bonds, because it's a blended fund, bonds did much worse this year than what they did last year. So it's held true with this one as well, since we have a similar blending between equities and bonds. So it looked good to me. I didn't have any specific questions, but I'll open it up to others if you had specific comments or questions on any of them.
Well, Jim, one of the questions I had, and Craig, I know you do this snapshot for us, and it's very helpful to have it all on one page. But when you get the information, do they have it broken out as to what their equities performed at versus their blended overall performance? Because that would answer Jim's question and my question. I had the same question, and then I thought about it, and I thought, oh yeah, we gotta mix in the bonds and cash equivalents. But to be able to back that out of the performance, then we're comparing equities to equities. And if the equities that PNC or Fifth Third is returning on a yearly basis are at 10 and the S&P is at 21, then there would be a reason to question the investment manager, at least, because I could go with a off-the-shelf S&P, not pay any fees, and outperform what the investment manager is doing.
Yes, they do break out what the portfolio is from an equity and your fixed income. They do break that out. In regards to having performances for targets for their bonds and everything, no, but they do break it out, what the portfolio is from percentage base and dollar value. One thing that I did not include this time was the Vanguard, the benchmarks from Vanguard, where I'd break it out to show what those 3-month rates were year to date. And that's something that would also highlight it, but I can see where if we apply those by a percentage point, you can definitely see what that portfolio looks like per investment manager.
Well, Craig, perhaps what you could send to us, if it's not too much work, total U.S. Bank for the year, what was their return on equity, return on fixed income, and getting to this blended return. So like with U.S. Bank, the 15.18. I don't think you need to go fund by fund by fund, but at least give us an idea on the fund managers, what their breakdown was between equities and fixed income for their blended total here for the year. Would that do it, Kevin?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, Jim.
Okay.
And Craig, I have a report that I get from US Bank, and it's the same team that manages your money and the Wise. And I'll shoot it to you and see if Ken could provide it, because it'll break down that 65% of the fund that's equities. It'll break it down another 6 or 7 different ways with different chunks where, you know, if there's some real estate component and large cap, mid cap, small cap, and you'll be able to see not just how the equity performed, but how a half a dozen different components of that performed. And I'll bet you Ken could give you that at least for US Bank. And if not, you can have something to ask him for. Overall,
That'll be great.
This portfolio looks a lot like ours, guys. Make 20% on equity, make nothing on bonds. And if you're 65-35, it's going to be 15%. So
I had a notice on the, I don't think this has been included previously. That is the sort of commentary in the yellow box where just S&P and Dow. I think those are nice. Or maybe it's been done on your end, but I don't recall seeing that before. That's just it's smart to have that data in the same place. Thank you for including that.
Yeah, that was just added just so kind of give a real quick, this is kind of why you're seeing the rates that you're seeing on the performance report, but I think it would be definitely beneficial to understand what is drawing those rates down from what we're seeing from
Right.
the equities.
But overall, obviously, I think it was a good year.
You're welcome.
Yes, yeah. Take full responsibility, John.
Don't call me in a bad year.
Yeah. Craig, anything that you would want to point out on this, on the returns?
The only thing I was pretty excited about was the PNC's rate. Something that we've always noticed that they've been a little bit behind the other investment managers, and to see them performing at a higher level, especially for the last quarter. And I think it's going to be exciting to kind of see what they do next year.
Yeah, I was going to make that comment when we talk about the individual fund managers or structure moving forward, but it was very positive in my mind as well to see that they've reacted and they've actually done something, and to see them outperform is a good thing.
It's kind of a testament to the purpose of the entire committee. I mean, that's kind of at the very most, that's the blocking and tackling is exploring any inconsistencies or underperformance in returns, and they made the adjustment. That's kind of what that was the goal. It can be as simple as that.
Yep, I agree. Okay, Craig, you want to move on then?
Okay. The next part of the agenda is the structural review of investments. So if you recall last meeting, one thing that came up was the focus of what is the next step of the Park Board Investment Committee. One of the big steps last year that we performed, actually last 2 years, was consolidate investment managers, as well as ensuring that the investment managers, 3 of them, had the same investment policy. So we've done well at accomplishing that. Now it's looking towards the future of what are the next steps. And one of the things that I would look at is, from a fee structure standpoint, is how can we possibly lower fees? We kind of know what each fee structure is. If you don't know, like PNC is the highest, I believe they're around like 80. Then you have 80 basis point. Then you have Fifth Third's around 92 basis points that we can't really influence too much. US Bank and Ball and Gainer were lower, around the 40s to 60 basis points. So I'm wondering if there's potential opportunity there of consolidation, but I want to also get your all feedback on going forward. What do we want to concentrate on? What do we want to look at?
Well, you've hit, obviously, a quick way of reducing fees would be to do further consolidation. So we had higher balances at certain banks. My initial gut reaction is, particularly because, as we said earlier, PNC has somewhat reacted to our nudging and has made some positive changes. At this point, I personally, I'm reluctant to further consolidate. I sort of like still having feet in US Bank, PNC, and Fifth Third. Perhaps one, Craig, you could help us look at, and I know it's not the driver for this, but PNC is a huge contributor to the parks. It would be interesting for you to give us insight into, are we getting support, meaning contributions, from US Bank, Ball and Gainer, and Fifth Third? It's one thing to say it's nice to spread the money around in our various institutions in Cincinnati, but if you're not getting anything for it, that could have another bearing on us.
And that's something that I even thought about, because PNC is a great contributor to the parks, and that's one thing that definitely, again, I'll go back to the performance. I'm really interested to see how they perform in 2022, because there could be an opportunity there, because they have such a great relationship with us at the park board. That is there, if they continue at that trajectory, is there an opportunity to maybe provide additional investments to them or trust to them? But I think that's for us to see in 2022.
And Craig, when you talk about their fees being higher, are we looking at an apples to apples basis? Because they have our day-to-day banking as well. So there may be obviously different fee structures for checking and all of that other banking that they do for us.
I'm only referring to this fee structure for the Betman investment, not the other investment or the checking account.
Great. Okay. I don't know what others think on this topic.
Don't you need guys to Craig and Jim, that you have to have about $10 million with one of these guys before you start getting much of a reduction in the management fee. Do you have a schedule, Craig, what PNC will do for not-for-profits? I know that from my experience, they were always a little bit higher than the others. It's not a big number. The banks were always somewhere between a point and 50 basis points. If you went to like Merrill Lynch or JP Morgan, you were going to pay a point to a point and a quarter. So it's not big money, but Jim, if you're going to try to keep money with all four of these managers, I think, and Craig, weigh in, I think it's going to be difficult to save much money on the management fees. But they generally will cut you a haircut like above 5 million up to 10 and something better beyond 10. What do you think, Craig?
Probably, yeah. And the 10 million is kind of usually that sweet spot where if you do invest over 10 million, that's where you can see a substantial fee reduction. And I can receive that fee schedule. It's probably in my email somewhere and pull that information.
Maybe we ought to compare everybody just so we know. I mean, it'll help to Jim's point. It'll help shape any discussion about whether consolidation ought to be a consideration. I think you're gonna have a hard time saving.
And if we can look at what the dollar amounts are, as opposed to just, how much really is 0.1%.
Yes.
Compared to how much PNC puts back into the parks. They're putting way more than 20 basis points back into the parks every year. So
yeah,
is it worth saving 20 basis points and pissing them off, and then they aren't as friendly to the parks? They turn around and put more money in the zoo.
Yeah. And I look at this as a long-term, it's short-term because it's within the next 2 to 3 years, but really evaluate how PNC is performing. And I'm really focusing on them because they continue performing at a higher level with that great relationship with us. That could be the opportunity of increasing their amount, because they're sitting around 7 million in investment. So if we would push that up to 10 million, but that also is determined by if they're separate accounts. They don't necessarily look at it as, okay, you have 10 million, but you have 3 separate accounts. So
yeah,
you may not get that benefit.
Craig, from an administrative standpoint, do you see much different from bank to bank, to manager, as far as ease of management, ease of doing business with them?
They're all phenomenal. We have great communication. I mean, each of them are very responsive. The only hiccup I had recently is trying to get John his PIN so we can wire some money. So Jennifer James left on the treasury side with PNC. So they finally got, after a month and a half, I finally got a hold of somebody that could help.
We just didn't want John transferring any money was the issue. So
I had a spot in Aruba all picked out and everything, which, since this is publicly broadcast, this is not true. This is a joke. There is no sense of humor in public meetings. So I retract my comment. I have a question relative to, we got this standardized IPS. Approximately what time was that? how long ago did that take effect?
I don't think it was till the second quarter, was it, Craig?
For PNC, it was in the second quarter. It was around May, I thought, May to June.
Because part of what I'm thinking is, and this is, counter to my nature is to look at things, 3 days is a long time, but in an assignment like this, in a responsibility like this, I think a longer horizon is appropriate. And before we're making shifts, do we need to give a little longer run period? Would this be, I think this is an appropriate conversation to have. And I don't think it's wildly early, but I think it would not be unreasonable to say, let's make sure that our Q1 23, because at that point we'll have 6 quarters of complete data with closer to apples. And I'm not sure it was a radical shift getting them onto the IPS, but it was something of a shift. And if I'm not mistaken, they were a little higher fixed income prior to getting them on the same IPS. So giving that a little longer interval to see what that yields would I think give me more confidence in acting on that data. If there were another reason to motivate a move, I don't think it's unreasonable to do so. But if we're not meaningfully unhappy with any of them, and we really just want to get in the space of maximizing, and then we factor in whatever the fee spread would be between 7 million, if we can get to 10 million and $1 kind of thing, I think I would not object to giving it really the balance of the year, absent anything that happens over the course of a year to warrant different action. But absent that, I think it's not an unreasonable thing to give it a full set of quarters, and maybe even a full set and a half of quarters before making a consolidation move.
John, I'm on the same page as well. If it's not broken, don't fix it. And I think we've fixed some things. We have done some consolidation. I think this committee over the past 3 years, I think we've done significantly good work for the park board. John obviously handled the increase in the market, but the rest of us handled the structural stuff. So I'm inclined not to make any dramatic changes. I think, Craig, the exercise of just looking at fees, I think it's for our own benefit. I think that's good fiduciary responsibility, is taking a look at it. But if there's nothing that's driving us, or nothing that we're pointing at in this last report that we've seen here that gives us heartburn, I would not be anxious to try something else or pursue something else. Kevin, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think that we have put a structure to this that didn't exist in 2018. If you look at where we were in 2018 and where we are in 2022, it's a world of difference. And let's not make changes for the sake of making changes. Seeing some more information, seeing the information we have broken down in different ways, I think is good, but we're doing well. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Steve, how about you?
I agree 100%. I agree with John. We need to give PNC a little bit more runway. We beat them up for 3 years, and then they'd look at us like, what'd you think we were going to do? You gave us the IPS.
Yeah.
And now I think we've leveled the playing field. I would agree. I am curious, Jim, if you did rebalance though, and you wanted to keep, the larger institutions happy, what are your options? Only to move ball and gainer money around?
That's really, they're the only ones that aren't institutional, but I don't know if it's just me personally, but I feel like we've done well with Ball and Gainer, and I feel like they give us some personal attention. And again, unless we saw a reason why there was a big change in market profile, I don't know that I would make any changes.
I tend to agree that it's good to have them in the mix because their approach is different than the other three. It just seems like responsible to have them managing part of your money. And maybe we never get to that $10 million with one of these guys. And to Kevin's point, there's performance is more important than a basis point or two here or there on fees. But I agree with you, Jim. We should periodically review those fees just because that's probably our job, just to make sure that they're all staying in the same universe. But
Yeah.
we're not going to get rich by holding their feet to the fire about money management fees or making everybody the same. But we should know that they probably are a little bit different. And let's face it, if somebody is charging you 1% and somebody's charging you 50 basis points, you're probably allowed to ask for a little bit more from that more expensive date.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Craig, for our next meeting, why don't we put an agenda item on there just to review fee structures for the next meeting? Also, for the next meeting, Craig, if you could give us an indication of participation via contributions. Perhaps you could ask the foundation as well. Tell them it's not because we're looking for more information about their business, but asking them at least, are the other banks, we know PNC's level of support for parks, and just get an idea of what we're seeing from US Bank and Fifth Third and Ball and Gainer. Maybe we'll put that on for the next meeting as well, Craig.
Okay.
And if you would follow up before the next meeting with just a recap on the 2021 year, on the breakdown between equity and fixed income.
Yeah.
That.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
One of the things beyond the purview of the investment committee, but going back to the big board, the park commissioner board, are we still at a 3% spend of these funds anticipated, at the beginning of the year when we say, okay, this is what we're going to do? Are we at 3 to 5? Are we at 3? And I mean, does it make sense now that we have the outside report and we've identified critical needs that, is our job really to continue to just grow these funds, or is it to spread some of the funds around like manure so that we can make our parks grow?
That's a perfect question, Kevin. And two steps here. First of all, spending decision for the coming year, we typically don't make until May, June, something like that. So we'll be waiting upon John and Craig to come back and say, what do we want to do next year? I do often remind everybody that we have money. So when opportunities come along, and I would encourage not just to spend, but to your point, if there's a need, spend it. We are still looking to the park staff to come back to us with a overall plan on the infrastructure report that we got, Kevin, as you're aware of. We have not settled on a real game plan or strategy on how we're going to attack that. But that's an excellent point that perhaps, and John and Craig, as you're thinking through this, we could do some creative things. That we could, as a park board, say, we're going to set aside 3% of endowment earnings for nothing but infrastructure or attacking what's on the infrastructure. I'm drawing these numbers off the top of my head, but if there was something along that line, I think that is exactly what we should be doing, putting this money to work, especially with where we are in the market cycle, and also knowing, as we all do on this call, that there's monies available that we sent back to these funds that technically over $1 million we could withdraw today, and put to use however we wanted to. So that's a good point. So over the next few months, John and Craig will be looking at it, and take that as an encouragement to you guys from the investment committee.
Well, and Jim, just to follow up on that, maybe when staff is negotiating the budget with the city manager and the new administration, instead of getting our normal $2 million for capital that we get, we ask them to participate on a 50% basis or something like that on an upward thing, and say, hey, we're going to take money out of the endowment and put it to work, but we need to see commitment from the city too. So, we've got our baseline of 2 million or whatever it is. We'll put 2 million more in. If the city will put 2 million more in, and then we actually have 4 million to actually make some infrastructure. And I never understood the argument that, and Jim, I know you beat this horse for a long time, about, capital projects that were approved and appropriated in 2018 or 2019 or 2020 still not being done. And the answer was always, we didn't have the staff to do it. But the reality was, we never do capital projects in-house. They're always put out for RFQ or RFP. So is it really that we don't have adequate staffing to put an RFP together for a capital project? Because I just see tremendous opportunity here, especially as we've got a new administration, especially as we now have that outside report, to really start eating the elephant a little bit. And instead of consistently saying we're $35 to $50 million behind on deferred capital spend, now we're only 30 behind. And next year we're going to be 25 behind. And the next, so that we can actually eventually get caught up.
Well, Kevin, let me unpack a little of that. You're spot on. And John and Craig will be going before the budget committee here in the next month or so. And we talked about the exact same thing, teeing up in that first opportunity before a new council of just what's the big picture here. We've been business as usual, so to speak, for the past 8 years, where it's like clockwork, getting 2 million, of which 800,000 has to go to salaries. So just the reality of where we are is something that John is going to start every opportunity that we have to be in front of council, to keep hitting that home, that we'll never catch up at business as usual with what we've been doing. So that you're absolutely correct. I like the idea of challenging them, that we will find out of our private endowment funds money to match stuff that they come up with. That's a great approach as well. As far as completely different topic in how we do business, as you are aware, we are in the process of interviewing and hiring a new manager in planning. And John has gotten in and is aware of different styles or different approaches to business. And I have to say, I just this week saw something from John that was something done in-house, Kevin, and it was excellent work. So I think that I'm encouraged that those types of things are being looked at and addressed at the moment. So I think we've got a lot of opportunities in not only making a commitment to spend money, but also the commitment to doing it most effectively.
We just have to slow roll the search for the new executive director so that we keep John in place for.
Nothing I have done. I characterized this the other day as I don't remember where I was, but I said I'm like the jockey who gets the flowers when the horse really won the race. So I appreciate the kind words, but there is no bandwidth or talent that was not there prior to my joining. So the team gets in here as we have structural challenges, undeniably so. One of the themes that I wanted to hit, and Craig did some research. He and I had a sidebar this morning, and this is sort of out of the purview investment, but it's kind of gets to the next item of general parks is there's been disinvestment. And let's see if I get this number right, Craig, but I believe in the last 6 years on a per capita basis, we have gone from 11th to 26th in the nation in terms of investment in our park system. And we're looking for other metrics that are, and I don't want to throw 70 statistics at the elected officials or the city administration. I want to pick a few key. I have a belief that we have regrettably disinvested in parks over 15, 20 years, but we're looking to find some illustrations of that are accurate, concise, compelling, and a rallying cry for people to able to operate. I think in the past we've framed it as a competition between parks and other departments, and I'm not a fan of that. The health department saves babies. I'm not going to take a needle out of a kid's arms to cut the grass in Alms Park. I'm not going to do it. So I get there are no bad actors in the city government, that there are that this is not a competition. The competition is against the realities of economics and the situation in which we find ourselves. So, but that doesn't fix the fact that we used to spend X and now we spend Y, and Y is especially in terms of spending power, because we've existed in most of what we do has existed in not quite a point a month, but close to a point a month of price inflation for 24 months. So if we did $5 million of capital work, that the 50 million is now 56 million, or whatever the math works out to be. So there's a real and accelerating hill to climb there, for sure, which is not to say negative at all. It's just, I think it's our role at Parks to illustrate that compellingly to the people who are positioned to do something about it, which at the end of the day is council, which is at the end of the day the voters. And people can decide, hey, I want lower taxes more than I want good parks. This is just algebra. When one side of the equation moves, the other side's going to move too. It just has to. And I'm happy to say this in a public record, because I'm queuing up to say it in a council chamber. But I think it's a message that needs to be delivered on behalf of parks and probably other departments as well.
And John, I believe the number that I gave you, 26, is actually 22. I said 26, but I just looked at it. It was 22, but it was a drop from 11 to 22 from 16 to 2021. And the other part we're looking at too, I haven't looked at it closely yet. I'm actually working on it, is how much are we spending per acre versus other municipalities? So we know what numbers those are going to look like. So get a good understanding.
I want to give props to Craig for digging that, because of my many multitudinous virtues, command of detail is not high on that list. So Craig's ability to scour that and keep me from saying 26 when I should have said 22 is key, because the last thing we want to do is present a powerful, compelling argument that's wrong, because then you didn't present a powerful, compelling argument. So we'll count on Craig to keep me between the rings.
You can blame me. I said 26 without looking at the number. And I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's 22. Darn it.
And Craig, I have to put my plug in for Mount Airy. So when you're doing that breakdown, break down spending per park in the city too, so that per acre per park. If you take 30% of the total park acreage is Mount Airy Forest, I can guarantee you we're not getting 30% of the spend.
Yes.
Washington Park maybe, but not.
Yeah.
There's a complicating factor in that we are one of, I believe, 2 major park districts that is not combined with rec. So the numbers are typically combined. So we have to tease those out a little bit. It's all just part of sort of an adjustment for the comparison. But I am grateful. We had a team meeting last week, was it, Craig? And sort of just talking about conceptually how we want to present that picture and what are the important elements of that. And different groups are stepping up in different ways to help paint that. Actually, it came up at the last the board meeting. Actually, it was after the capital, but there was sort of a conversation that went down that direction. So our group met after that, and I think has some good ideas about how to clarify the business case moving forward.
If we look at the last item on our agenda was discussing outstanding items and park projects. I'm pleased to say that John is probably in a better position than I am at this point to do that. I'll just tell everybody that we are actively pursuing a new permanent director, since we only have John on leave on a borrowed basis. We do have the job posted. There is a full color brochure that we're using to tell a little bit more of the story rather than just a job posting. We are looking nationally. We are one change that is of note as we are looking. We have broadened the requirements or experience that we call out in all of the documents that we're using to recruit, that we're not stuck on somebody that has actual park management experience. We feel that it's become very clear to us that we've got a very, very talented parks staff who are park experts. And we see the role that John is sitting in today as one that is more outside pointing and dealing with a lot of stakeholders, whether it be governmental, community activist type of people, dealing with a crazy set of 5 volunteer board members, that sort of thing. So we were broadening it to someone that's a true leader, that's had some management experience in complex organizations. So we're casting the net a little bit broader, and hopefully we will attract some good talent for this position.
The Children's Hospital model, Jim.
Yeah. So I would encourage you guys, both Kevin and Steve, as you're thinking through people that you may be aware of that are in management in Cincinnati or other places that maybe a little out of the box thinking about a park director position, but something help us recruit and find the next director for parks. We're moving forward. John's working on getting Lytle Park moving again. So that is going to be teed up here. There's a lot going on, Kevin, in planning for Mount Airy. Besides what you're reading in the newspaper today, focusing on Mount Airy, there's planning for the Bike Skills Center there. We've got planning for additional trails. So I think we all see Mount Airy as an opportunity. Kevin, I think before you left the board, you heard about an environmental project, biochar, that is it's a project where we will take wood from trees that have been cut down and through a process make it into a material called biochar that is rich in nutrients, plus it retains water more. That's great for material to use in planting new plants. And that's something we're looking at perhaps doing a big project over in Mount Airy as well, maybe on the other side of the interstate over there. So I think we all see a lot of opportunities for Mount Airy.
My beer garden?
Well, I think we've got a lot of opportunities around the city for either pop-up beer gardens or permanent beer gardens. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. John, is there anything else that you would want to share as far as, I'm trying to think through projects on the horizon here, but
I did have, pickleball is in active planning toward implementation, a few snags in the process, but we are working on resolving those. The boat dock is in active negotiation to go from being it's kind of a vote dock, now it's going to be a boat dock, and we're working on taking that forward through that process. The less sexy but no less important, the DNR Headquarters Relocation is a sizable project. Actually did in talking with the planning design team, that was just earlier today. Time is very fluid, but in talking with them earlier today, they have over 100 pending projects in different stages of the process, which is an astonishing load. And in my mind, kind of frames one of the core competencies we need from that division manager around kind of traffic flow and certainly project management and triage a little bit. And are there opportunities to combine projects and all that? So I think, but that was an astonishing number that 100 active projects is impressive. So a little daunting to be sure. And some of those are further along, but it was just that's a real and accurate number. So there are some early stage conceptual conversations about some things along Central Parkway and sort of expansions of Freedom Park is the working name. Those are, I think I'd call more exploratory and more early stage conceptual, but it does continue to build energy in the park system. One of the things that I need to work on, I need to just kind of lock myself in a communicationless room one day, is a sort of a scoring matrix or screen or filter process so that we can apply because as much as I rail against it, I've developed my own pet project in my 6 weeks here, and I think having an opportunity to apply some numerical discipline to those is probably helpful because I don't think we're going to be the situation where all of our needs can be funded, to say nothing of, even if they were funded, how you actually get them done. So applying some priority over using our energy and our resources to our most highly desired elements in the park system is only logical. So developing a system by which we can do that is not, if I were Craig or Patricia, I'd be going, we have talked about it conceptually. I think it needs to leave concept and get to paper or digits at some point. But I do think that is one thing I've ascertained in 6 or 7 short weeks is that would be a very useful tool that I think if I were in your chair, Jim, I'd be interested. And the one I have developed might suck, but having a tool that would be good and robust and accepted, I think would be a helpful tool for the commissioners to allocate resources as makes sense with the strategic direction of the system.
Great. So there's a lot going on. Kevin or Steve, do you have any questions, comments, or input for the good of the cause?
Well, one other, just to report back, one of the other non-budgeted pools of money through the Board of Overseers. I sat through my first meeting on that with John and others. And one of the things that came to light was that staff was working with the Board of Overseers, and it was staff had kind of, I don't know who initiated the discussions, but it was very clear that staff was really wanting that entryway redone. So it wasn't all being pushed by the Board of Overseers, but we are coming up to the spring as we're approaching this first significant snowstorm. And, this year's project list in and around Bicentennial Commons, will be, I think, an important one, because it will be one where the staff will be meeting with the Board of Overseers to fund not only pickleball courts, but other things as well.
With that, I do want to, Jim, since I have you on, I did receive the executed copy on Friday, and I reached out to Bill. I'm going to reach back out to him. He hasn't reached back out to me yet, so to get something scheduled.
Great. Sure.
Jim, I have an observation and a question. Have you ever noticed how well the market does when we are having these meetings and we keep John's hands out of it? Because I've been watching it throughout the last 60 minutes, and it just seems like it always does well during this meeting. Maybe because he's sitting there.
You don't like me over the quarter. If you don't like the quarterly results I deliver, I can't respond to that. So,
and I had a follow-up that a question. I think I've asked this before, and I apologize. And you always have to refresh my memory, Jim. Kevin brought up the idea of spending some of this house money, right? And that's what we're playing with the markets for the last 24 months. And Jim, on a couple of occasions, you've mentioned this cash that we have transferred out, but then not expended. And I just forget, is that money out of the market now? Is it sitting in lazy cash? Is it in that Fifth Third portfolio? Or is it invested in something less aggressive because of that action?
Yeah, what we've done, so any of that money that's been transferred out but not yet spent, Craig has that they're in P&C accounts. What we have done over the past couple of years, though, Craig worked with P&C, and we have a portion of that money actually invested in a more, I won't say aggressive, but more than a money market. So that's part of the P&C line item that you see on that monthly report or a quarterly report that we get from Craig that says P&C commissioners.
Yep.
That's part. So right now, when I looked at the December report, there was almost 4.4 million sitting in that P&C commissioners. That's invested in more than money market. I don't think it's, Craig, you can correct me, I don't think it's as aggressive as the other, but at least it's earning more than point something percent.
That is correct. It's a 60-40.
Okay.
And then, yes, we do have money sitting in a money market account, and that's going to be around about 2.6 million that is not seen in this report. And that's for money to be transferred over to the city for expenditure whenever it's needed.
But you can understand the math question that I have, Jim. If it's kind of better to spend that money first, obviously. In hindsight, you'll be glad that you didn't spend $2 million of money that was earning 20% in 2021. But it sounds like this is almost the same as a lot of the rest of the portfolio. If it's at 60-40, I mean, it's a lot like the rest of the funds. Not quite, but
Yeah,
it sounds like you've got a lot of dry powder to do really solid, productive work.
well, that's right, Stephen. And to your point, we always talk about, should we pull more money out? And I know that my colleague, Commissioner Castellini, also is pushing that we spend what we have available. So that's the piece that I mentioned earlier that I continue to talk with John and others about, that if there's things that we could put that money to use for, it's sitting there. It's not earning nothing, but it's money that's available that has been already distributed from our endowment funds. And if there's things that we can do that are positive, we should be doing it and spending it. And that's what John's focused on. Okay, well, we are right at 4 o'clock, and the sun's still shining in Fort Lauderdale, and you all probably have to get your ice picks out.
I can mute Jim if you guys want me to, or I can have Kelly.
Craig, when would you like to schedule our next meeting?
I would like to schedule it. Let's see, we're finishing up the first quarter. It's going to be end of March. Would we like to have a meeting before we make a decision on distribution, which occurs usually in May or June, to go over the first quarter results? Or do we want to kind of push it back to May and go over the first quarter, then also make a distribution recommendation?
From my perspective, again, I think things are going well. Perhaps I would like to have the meeting when we could look at first quarter results, but I would like to have our meeting in advance of the board taking action on next year's budget. So if you can fit that in, if that's early May or the end of April, that might be best. Craig, you can decide what's the best course there.
We'll target it towards the end of April or first week of May, just because it does take them sometimes a few weeks to send the reports to me.
Okay. Do you want to look at a date now while we got everybody?
Yeah. Let me pull up my calendar.
So we've got April 27th is the last Wednesday in April, and Star Wars Day is the first Wednesday in May, May the 4th.
Either day is fine with me.
Why don't we shoot for the end of April, if that works for Steve?
I think so.
Craig, why don't we push for that? This time, if for some reason we have to reschedule it, it gives us early May.
I will send an invite out today.
What are we going to do, Craig? April 27th?
Yes, April 27th from 3 to 5. Would we like to have PNC present, provide a presentation, and kind of give them their kudos if they're performing well?
We saw PNC. Who would be in the rotation? We saw Ball and Gaynor last quarter.
US Bank, I believe, is due up.
I also like to have an opportunity to get them in, just because of a few meetings that we have. Why don't we plan then for the April meeting to have US Bank in to present first, and then hit out before, including your recommendation for distribution for this coming budget.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the cause? Well, hearing none, then thank you guys again for your commitment to this. Thanks to John for double duty, continuing with us on this committee as he's focusing on a few other things there at the park. And look forward to talking to all of you before the next meeting, probably. And Kevin, I know you've got an item, whatever you've got, if you want to send to me regarding Mount Airy, that'd be great.
Yeah, I sent the letter out. The board hasn't signed it yet to send it back to me. So,
Okay, that's great.
but I told them I wanted to get it on the February agenda for you guys. So
Perfect.
I'm pushing them.
Okay, sounds good. And Craig or John, if you need me, I'm available by phone.
I will, in the next day or two, not with any urgency, but just a few accumulated updates to share at your convenience. And it seems like a lot of schedules are clearing as the White Death descends upon us. I think the admin building is closed Thursday and Friday, so everybody will be, I just got that alert while we were on this call. So per the CMO, more and more offices are closing. So we'll be remote, and that may create a little more time to catch you up anyway.
Super. Well,
So you're not flying down to Fort Lauderdale, John, to meet with the president?
I keep checking my mail for the invitation, and I'm sure it's a problem at the post office. So
checks in the mail, right?
I look forward to that.
Okay, well, thank you guys, and stay safe up there, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys, good meeting.
Bye.